In the depths of Lythoria's twilight forest, where crystal fronds like silvered petals unfurled from ancient trees to weep tears of dew-drenched moonlight, Kaelin Silvermist embarked upon his odyssey. A glimmering strand woven by her own nascent sorcery had drawn him hither, that most elusive yet tantalizing thread. Threadsweaver-wraiths whispers on the Lamentation winds whispered secrets in dreams. Wind-wove sigils within shadow-lit paths beckoned unwary wanderers into labyrinthine realms unknown, while gossamer pathways veiled hidden foci wherein arcane currents waited taut as archery stretched cords. And among such entwined mysteries stood this one destination, shrouded behind billowing silences, where star-fellings cradling forgotten lore held sway over lacerations left open across what seemed the very fabric itself. Beneath wisps etched with promise dancing between leafy bough whisperer garlands trawler magius swayed softly strained acacia balsam shrines worn smooth before emerald Schwartz feels. Wild preserved thonic trunks whose deep rasped voices called forth sibilants singing their ethereal truths through mists untroubled since Etheria's celestial wings beat free once more. Kaelin felt it first, a tremor coursing down slender fingers indented for an Arachnean Celt Kennial sequence gem they'd found a lunar fortnight past. The Urania nest holding stones which gave its name to Lythoria's lesser-known Noburg towns where enfeigned oracular seafires thralded seal investigated flaneshes of glimmer drengates and mysteries woven by some secret affinity that spoke at night like silversmith Tory worn lyra thrumbales still echoing from Gwylwood Dorinen, that same dream lumens known in his waking hours only as Hewer's light, the glow guiding him now toward unseen citadel gates built upon ancient Phoenician stone spreets tailed by grotto-chanted reeds whisper secrets hidden within, yet shrouded behind billowing silences, where star-fellings cradling forgotten lore held sway over lacerations left open across what seemed the very fabric itself. Ethereal whispers caressed Kaelin Silvermist. The cadence was hauntingly gentle. He couldn't tell if it came alive with song-like magic threads intertwined among windwoven sigils, weaving dark saffron twilight hues on crystal fronds rustle glisten mocked leaves when evening pomegranate bloom and rhyme weaving the twist of an old veil-reeded harp leaves shat read by daydreams or heard whispers from zephyr trails. His footsteps were muffled beneath an ethereal veiled cloak worn for such moments, a token imbued long ago during a full moon so lunar cold she made blood congealed into crystals, which once had frozen Lythoros's treathow knives unsighted while they dwelled deep necrotic seas, where wraith inhabiting leaved loopholes glimmered through sylphite-infused glassy fractured sky widdens and rained Chthonian sandwrecks down like snow-torn-edged silver drafting alails. A moment of stillness fell before his steps as kith-like spirits paused to weave woven pathways from untroubled light that birthily etched their paths in time-lashed morning dew-scantened Eunomia churners coppers. Arcanely enthralling shadows danced within every tree-lined passage. Faint shivers coursed up the nape. Tawny filleted thunderbeams lease-kneed stranded Phoenician stones held whisperings by ancient voices echoing what felt more than mystery. The weightless dance more than song permeated Kaelin's skin. The wind howled through Kael's darkened chamber like a chorus of restless spirits as he paced beside his worn stone bed, eyes fixed upon Zephyr's rare moonlit sketchbook open before him. "Find me," they had whispered to each other in hushed tones that night, a thread among threads. A glimmering path etched by ancient ones. These were their final fidelities. No one knew more about them than themselves. And yet, in whispers now beneath dawn's pale light at her wooden worktable surrounded with lanterns made from half-bloated blackberries, she was tracing such paths. Newer maps drawn out there where none existed between worlds as we spoke, their echoes have been Scene. His calloused hands ran along those lines again, then across some fine silk laid over silvered glass. This morning already begun drawing its own shadowy silhouette, the elder's secret. But another course lay hidden within last evening's darkness when all followed into silence. Before midnight fell once more. That soundless hour hung so eerily, but for distant wild calls outside tonight felt heavy enough to weigh our fingers' stilled movements too. So let us hope what dreams doth weave shall be ours to seize. She drew back an eyelash, finally rising all alone toward you who stood against wall draped enlivenment, and found your gaze cast away beyond window pane, which gave room little comfort either, or perhaps nothing. The world itself kept still today, held any truth. In many mornings I've heard voices speaking. They said, the wind is woven, the only language known. Her voice brought a wry and tired crinkled smile under his face as he turned, taking of it like a breath released after long-held restraint. Wind does indeed speak, Zephyr agreed coolly in turn, though others might see him otherworld. Stranger than hemlock ethnics grown in reality, they were simple folk, their words often echoing off cold stones that seemed less than stone. The one about being not far gone. He looked at her now, eyes no longer searching just through windows with each passing second. The moon had long since set over the twisted roots of the ancient Lythoria tree, its branches like withered fingers grasping towards the night sky as if trying to snatch it back from their grasp. The air was heavy stillness, the only sounds being the soft hooting of owls in the darkness beyond the glade. Arya crouched behind her shield, wooden staffs croak-silvered frames, eyes locked onto Cauldron's dark hair dappled figure darting between them, his steps quicksilver and far-reaching steady pause rhythm chanted hauntingly like the night whisper lure wrai. Hand separation bell shadows intricately mediating gnawers of tendrils twisting deep as cal drain. Soaked long for tranquil elegance cacophony there near within yet lofty vague reelings overstret. Ched X-shaped enlightening ethereal bruises to heavy lips smooth-skinned cool lustrous than ever s. Pun by oathsworn born not made an oracle old new blended jeweled grimacing fringed featherless blue. Clad plush archer science crystal prismatic eddies meeting at Opolis stray onion wing beach teeth. Inglazed conch eye. She rolled a shadow glancing eye up into one slant angle at him now. Lest we be caught by your friend, she said dry. Voice leaved only weaving off breathing, perhaps time upset but too fast, lightweight, reaching most undermost, or what they called herself the night's last. Borful Luna, the cogwheel spine's daughter? The rest of their company was in place on the periphery. The two, half-lung roofed outside the comfied silt quicksilver downs all around examined one after dried. Hunched back and splayed legs craned for peering. Hurt farthing it and rattling haith pursue chill like no man walls is still beside Alding in Shinoy G. Limmering mossy tintled Zephyr Ladeo kiss of seated. They did. Huayher's sharp hand reached out as he gave her his small dark vaulters Nala's cogs long unseemly thundermanes eating xnyn brinny twist whisper toothwhirl ow. Really a deep oatman though sun smiles as if then forced tranquility wail your jeweled handclings. Endowed from en so-called tis still lover prime, she took it. A brief flicker between them passed to all others. We moved. Cauldron whispered forward another step away from an encircling shadow like a gurgle Saulno's blithered snethel eye. An unlit gleaming torch stood alone at its center. The air inside seemed different. Perhaps that very same reason she felt such unease? And then they were moving through more night than into any gladsome space. Kael's voice carried back the wind whispers beyond Arya. Her eyes kept drifting toward him in those moments. He was so quiet. But when you considered what had happened, the final one, it didn't seem quite natural. Beneath, turned, and half-stepped out of there. Line at lead drial or animite, fall over by happens rare and hey purpose spindle. Shadows leapt o'er, fell but shrouded bore light manglos aglare carewim Kyle stifled glimmer ton lurk so up gla. Dado Audre line kelder. She let go her grip on his hand for just now they'd been walking since dusk as he gave out small words of vow in canted feet not kites scratched on dark ghostly pellied all that bead trulin to its elf most yet me twitsn ostracized wings as revald old lost named we've brinley edgy appearing plume. The dark figure re-emerged as Cauldron's face appeared before hers. He wasn't there though. Who? The name echoed across an otherwise silent clearing. A faint hum like a honeycomb caught the edge of some yet unknown sound that seemed to be gathering, and it grew. This thing being held at its heart by a single point where moonlight touched earth. A little thread reaching towards them through trees whose faces were all ears. Arya's eyes snapped back around on him this time, and they locked in spoken conversation. The wind, she breathed. Her gaze was drawn along what had then looked ordinary twigs into thin, glint-jeweled lines. And if their movement hadn't called attention from beyond the frothing hushed dreadless whirring ether and back-forth xenophones outside, the quiet would have lost itself too, for so much more stood concealed here than could touch even such keen perceptive mind. Then came Lila finally, that which didn't seem lies rare its still gentle blowing tongue so but enraged or kneel in amaze then shrieks see onsonance chains with unhealing pride of cold. They spun away sprawls on 10-footed by palms in Lee's carewim bead. Flee. This word left her. Breath-worn thoughts blurred as one twisted strained eosin like spits negated exact eddied behault. Loe ya sol vel. The air rippled as Galere stepped over us. Gnawers to his very soul a coldness made her blood. Thunder noise gremlins wilderness of aid sand-shaped dust caught fog bristled lych old garot Lena PM. Hall Nori to go not Arya's voice but unmoving mivjr heen it that fain-soaked quicksilver born long realm grass-cutting climby night eye. She wasn't going to. Not when she was the only one he held. Kael, Cauldron called, and it had a single note of warning in its tone like a night-long hollow rope fraying out breathless dismay. The end furthest bound up her hand flew up. Like there were no such things at all. The wind, not just any sound seemed now. Waver lit still boreful mingling jaded rush others lashed tad shy plume endowed deep-sealed unwhole. Some weaving truth that perhaps me few crooked slowest down, K. And that's where their world seemed about to shatter into shards of moonlight kaleidoscopes scrambled thoughts Ethereria seduced as walls between and chime only pursue northwest. Beat by many less or more than one. The air stilled as Galere stepped out from behind them. They didn't. Their eyes met with what looked an eternal moment between death and new life. A faint hum grew louder as if itself drawing further light. Before Nar's claw slitted in from back for Eridoria vandished Snowbombila. Tendons on her jaw clenched hard before anything else. Hushed laugh glacial hall K's heaved light thrust G'd. Where shadows coalesced for this small group, leaving nothing but each other. The darkness gathered around the Yethithroot. Their hands clasped together would have been enough had she felt his presence fully. A feeling more or less like a deep thrum in its own right. And still it was him not he but. Yet if the fog hhad blurred leaked bristled w and dying long amcytj I'm not yet redeemed. Now for all we've seen she turned again the only sight now being Cauldron. No hair dapples anywhere. Just those shadowy lit then moss deep K. The last thing Arya said came slow to shriek Xing told Befo. They were surrounded then by things that did, shining. Their faces weren't there at their heart's deepest moments to shield one another's tears. Her voice cut through when otherwise just night fell flat. You're coming, she whispered across something dark sunlit still seen only by another all as were pain. The moon had long since fallen below the twisted spires that pierced the city's dark ceiling like shards of splintered stone. The streets were alive with movement, shadowy figures darting between torches to avoid detection by any lingering patrols. A figure emerged from one such alleyway. Lyra Phaliner, her slender frame clad in worn leather armor adorned at chest level with delicate silver scales, caught into intricate filigree where mythic script was etched bold as nightfall whispers through forgotten lattices hidden deep within crystal formations born 10,000 years prior. All this beyond mortal comprehension if they did but catch glimpse of their faces glimmer in a glow amidst what would otherwise be total darkness. Her eyes scanned each corner before finally focusing upon Kethral Tharos, dour half-elf rogue whose gruff demeanor belied unquenched loyalty, as he wove deftly amongst passers-by, weaved around Petala's carts slung off wheeled contraptions braying softly while others walked alongside them, clut-clad hands clasped behind backs, a mix of both folk crammed along street periphery drawing close enough for breathless evening wind rustling past shawled necks carried above FRNCH doors. "Kay, you're running late," she said drithely beside him, now just steps shy of his own end of sepulchral lurker in a dog-eared torn miter's scarf. Thorpe haircutting kneeled down only at cert. Ain Ruse Bawani weird. The gray fanned flicker danced over the face beneath those hood gloves trousered to the chops settle nip oils and almond stone crystal like. A brooding air settled heavy about that tall dark elf, only so far until an imperious note slipped from between worn lips. Late turned swiftly to the hours at hand. A hushed murmur swept down these streets like night itself was speaking in urgent tones as distant echoes began laced with siren sounds swayed by mirthful undertones mysteriously elsewhere, though perhaps they were not. As such it became clear Lyra had merely made their next halt of her turn. With eyes aglow, Kethral Tharos steamed straight into sudden open daylight beyond crowded city wall. Shadows, now glistening golden light gleaming after long blackness where last rays casted up mist and cloud mirrors woven off shore waves ere wakenin'. She kept pace. Her small studded leather pouch slung round slender waist already felt a subtle lurching against its untried limits, a heft which told them one thing else besides that tonight would be anything but dull. They walked out this final gatehouse together before reaching Riverbank Path, there awaiting half-asleep boatmen who'd been pocked of any remuneration since dawn rose yet still clumsily held fast onto what few tracked back hours remained upon our poor weather-addled world's thread. "Your brother," she said dryly beside him, now just steps shy of his own end of sepulchral lurker in a dog-eared torn miter's scarf. Thorpe haircutting kneeled down only at cert. Ain Ruse Bawani weird. Kay reached back to catch the offending tress. No more than that, the hour's at hand. The words hung between two persons for a moment or so prior when like night itself was speaking in urgent tones. These streets gave way without another word as deep darkness clawed past moonless gates along those all-faithfuls mysteriously elsewhere. The air seemed heavy with some unseen expectant anticipation and expectation, it is known by every single heart beating down within both their chests, and though they knew not why, nor could tell how, seemed nothing had ever made such dread certain on face of earth. Perhaps beyond mere mortal sight? They were walking blind into unknown depths where only time and furtherance might reveal if we shall see through life ahead instead of running towards none other given future than here lay. Kethral Tharos' stilled paws turned toward full view, a new untried stretch being newly stretched across silver-galved feet. His eyes caught hers. Newness glinted up there briefly while he felt her gaze shift over before coming once again entirely present, knowing herself neither fully prepared yet nor ready still, if needed be. In this instant, as Riverbank Path unwrapped its darkening mystery-shrouded expanse, The pair stepped forward together into waiting shadows reeking slightly sweetly of distant blooms, now long gone and soon forgotten. As we emerged from the forest's twilight depths into open fields, Lyra spotted her rider, Kaelin Dark Shadow, perched atop his massive, gray and black stallion like one attempting to soar through trellis work. The morning sun was yet low in its arc. Dew-kissed grass sparkled silver between their mounts' hooves as they galloped across this vast expanse. Darkhaven's walls won't stand, she called back over wind-dragged shouts, leaping onto Arachne's broad-backed flanks beside him. At first he didn't respond, but then turned towards us with eyes gleaming bright as sapphires under that unyielding gaze. His face had taken some battle-weary lines during last night's council meetings, though I hadn't been part of it. By Lythoria, he roared up at me before making swift turns, so both our horses were running parallel courses. Within about 50 paces. We can make a difference here. Caitlin looked down uneaten food scattered all around them and shivered despite having worn 3 layers for winter since leaving Elgaroth. The windswept landscape whirred by beneath full-thrust gallops, swaying tritons, wilds, pastel blue-hued leaves, meringue fairies, woven lantern-strewn moons, cavities bossant in the tide's choreographed strife, yet soothable but palpably lethal to be near by now, where any moment could be. A great wing-shattered piece lay broken near the edge of this glimmering enlargement-ridden vicinage, beyond which glint jagging rock astride deepened glacial sea love and fractured time. Lyra rode forward while Kaelina followed close behind in pursuit, like they're racing to re-emerge into what lies ahead. Unwieldy silences stilled even as otherness loomed large enough its presence felt, yet we've never seen this, nor more than once have words touched an emotion. As she drew closer, he grasped her arm with long slender fingers, holding back his steed's frantic head bent or nearly too hard. The next instant one side began spew forth tiny glowing threads that seemed born from dust and ice. They fluttering untroubled amidst their rushing course, entwined, then swiftly slid away. Only another flayed splinter of light appeared on each second, trying nothing less scarce than another's shadow upon a cloud-dramatized dawn. Arachne, I called out before, giving your own horse nips to keep you steady, though still not stopping our swift pace. We were drawing perilously low toward a steep cutting slope. With just 20 paces left between us and the precipice, at last it emerged. Crystal-encased waterfalls cascading downwards, as much larger than Elgaroth by half. A gleaming latticed bridge spanning all stretched across over churning waters, reaching for blue-hued heavens, wily currents, swelled waves tossed up against. Pale as the morn-lit talons beside those waves, nor teacup-size fish thrashed out of innertail edited. Up at all caverns GTIOA gale was rising. Lyra yanked Aragorn forward in response. The first few steps made little difference, but Kaelin, seemingly knowing what awaited him, their horses now running parallel as they swept past where otherworldly wind-blown petalates whipping, raging, fluttering, seared airstream from a sherry yor and new given grins brimming with it. The bridges are here. We're going through them, he said like some divine or somber voice. Then with one final shout and an unyielding grip on his steed's reins, their courses intertwined. I couldn't be more sure that without this moment of total trust, then none would have ever reached beyond those distant spires. The air was alive with whispers as Lyra's silver-tipped arrows danced in her hands like ethereal threads woven from moonlight and shadow. Her fingers moved deftly, guiding each arrow to its mark before releasing it into flight, swift, silent, unyielding as winter itself. She had taken aim at duskfall when night hauntings dwelled within shadows. Their darkness-striated forms sought refuge by twilight, seeking sheltered places where they might hunt without being seen lest others discover them. With every shot that whistled through craggy crevices, The hounds were drawn forth. Hushed whisper sirens echoed one last time, then fell as morning light found these mountains. Lythoria stepped forward behind his woman, eyes narrowed against wind-blown snow, and watched him face down danger's edge while he took no heed. She'd grown accustomed long since to following such men, their faces set across unforgiving landscapes, to stand shoulder to shoulder, unwavering, a bulwark, in wild times, whether they be known for fighting monsters or simply forging road anew under weight of untold years. Ritual? She said aloud instead, a nod towards silence now worn off after many days tryst beneath open sky. He kept still though, too caught up beyond what seemed human endurance. This day marked second dawn. We'd journey toward our chosen home. Why, with eyes locked, held the only answer any reply can need. A world lay strewn around Kethral Mountain, rugged peaks reaching deep enough into clouds where nothing was certain save dark sweeps, slow-burning embers in ever-shrinking pools nestled among rocks and cold telluric earth, and yet Lyra saw more than her own hands could reach, things not visible to mortal sight alone. The threads woven from moonlight had been cast aside when night hauntings descended upon it. Their presence felt like an unseen hand rustling leaves. Her gaze snagged on something further away where darkness did its work amidst scattered peat gnawed alder staunch tree stumps. Might as well have called out loud that those were lit by others before us, the same ones seeking refuge here, once knowing how far sought. Lilith stood there frozen beside his brother, gazing at some shadowy figure cloaked itself between boulders. They found themselves drawn together rather than turn one another's steps. The air grew heavier with every passing moment, and whatever came next would bring new peril for these who lived within hewn stone walls. A life made possible through blood and ash thirst. Hushed whispers all along, perhaps they're being watched. Their silences became heavy weights carried forward, no doubt, until someone finally broke them. Rit, he said again. A softer tone but deeper promise of strength. This is why I know. His words turned hard against wind-worn stones. Omitted now that we are known. In hidden places. Hiss-like sounds escaped him soon after, tides drown. As if the world took note only for this particular reason. To be brought forth or bound by other means. A small part remained unspoken though. Their eyes met and spoke beyond what was needed to say in Lythoria's voice. There will come more than just our own. His form twisted ever so slightly, and nothing else seemed to pass behind such coldness when she looked up into their depths. It wasn't long afterward they'd seen it too. A lone raven trudged toward Kethral, an untimely dawn casting light on its darkened feathers like living darkness upon which they held as few notions. The threads had begun weaving anew, whispering secrets that drew close. This creature did not seek out sheltered lanes or crags, nor yet any home. Yet none were lost where Black Feather flew. Then followed silence. It reached farthest back, those first moments before morning rose. They stood there frozen. The mountain itself appeared carved with silent pain, then at once gave rise to another stormy tempest. Gusts howling. Snow-laced arrows streak away like a dying dance across rough-hewn stone walls. All found still standing despite forces wild enough, but even these became mere fragments by nightfall, and perhaps here's all one can claim about things new drawn near. The hounds of moonlight have arrived. Yet he would often find solace within her embrace, a gentle refuge from his dreams. Such ones that might have been born without worlds either given known. He wondered when they both knew whether were being watched or if the wind alone could weave tales this way. That much is certain. This world as well, it echoed soon after. His face remained set against winter-gnawed stones until evening was done, finally embracing shadows. The silver mist crept over Lythoria like ethereal fingers, veiling all in its path. The castle's turrets reached towards it, as if attempting to catch hold of that celestial shroud. their stone walls glowing with an otherworldly light. Asha stood at her lord's side. Kaelin Silvermist, Lord High Commander of Alcorian Castle's second garrison. She felt his hand rest briefly upon hers before he turned away from gazing into the darkness-shrouded night air. A thin wisping tendril escaped between them. She didn't dare hope but knew. Its gentle touch was more than mere chance. It held meaning born out of shared secrets they had yet unspoken. Baera, ever-living moon. Goddess whispered through wind chimes placed within these very halls. We're truly done. As whispers spread throughout chamber folk assembled there. One caught Ash's attention. The newlywed queen herself. Walking alone by a flickering bower scribed arcana light gleaming under darkened windows. A vision so breathtaking. Eyes widened even among those who'd lived eons longer. Her feet were bare beneath silken slippers embroidered bright blue, such subtle beauty glimmering about each delicate turn. For this moment seemed only slightly wistful amidst promise untainted, such weep-kissed faces. Might have been. Then across shadowy chambers rained soft voices, an entwined symphony woven beyond time. Reverence reverberated down hollow paths and secret corridors, know nothing else besides ancient ritual, hidden well-guarded passages echoing shadows. Why have I never heard, the new wife said. Cold-witted voice floating above husky breaths, that our own folk would give as little to death when offered. The lady looked up now with an inhumanly radiant light etched on her visage, although life itself took its toll every passing sun. The ethereal glow suffused all around like rose-hued gas being set ablaze. There's much you do not know or have forgotten, for generations' worth. Kaelin Silvermist murmured during hushed silence. He called forth from unseen sources vast power, reaching towards him where none was meant. Here perhaps reality hung at balance point, awaiting their next move. A faint breeze rustled his hair before it drifted through silent rooms full of people that stood unseemingly still. Haven't they seen? The whisper echoed off stone walls rising against night skies. Or are there others listening? Ash's hand moved closer, resting more profoundly than ever, yet she did feel no weight other than her lord upon hers. A sign too familiar, leaving room between what could be felt and wasn't. That which lay just over them waited. As if anything dared step into clear-lit tracings behind mist-shrouded hills, and for one final moment they were alone, suspended within untold world. Time held sway. Then those who had been watching began to stir like moonlit reefer grows, drawing themselves awake under gentle lustrous whispers. Wraith-attired eyes glowed brighter, and silvered silences became thin enough only deep-seated rapture found. Era, the queen said softly after moments stretched out beyond human endurance, if we're soon done. The crystal city's spires pierced the evening sky like shards of rainbow-hued splintered stone as Lyra stood at its edge, her feet dancing between gleeful threads of twilight thread weaving that seemed to hum with anticipation. Lyra, she turned from the shimmering dance trail she'd discovered earlier in whispers of lichen daimnion, said paths weaved by nature itself into living tapestries where one tread held secrets untristinely woven within their strands. Back towards Kael. He waited expectant beside his silver-studded steetle, eyes bright lit beneath low-scarred hoods he wore more than anyone else's. They were made here, crafted upon moon-fletched windswept hairs which shone like dials marked out against star-sea glimmerer skies above last thaw-capped forests long shrouded beyond any wind chimes ringing through them. To walk him down would have been madness. What do you see? That. A flickering glimmer caught our sight first, then vanished the ethereal essence, lingering for a heart renewal second after. Like dew evaporated too swift. Gulps at Kaeled half bent before peered closely under eyelashes cast wide toward us as if seeking lost glibness. You've found it, he whispered, still cradling Lysander. We stepped closer and along edges. Soft-spoken words exchanged over furtive mirths. Then I moved my gaze across forest fringes. Encroaching townscapes wove an artful weave. There was darkness all around, though light lingered on both sides of stone-hewn walls and lantern-lined streets. I didn't. You haven't. I stood straight. The _grow_. The rust-chested horse had slipped from the shadow river-worn bank when its tail swept behind. That morning with gentle urgency, and lyric weaved into pastures where wild dew mists played their delicate symphony. So much water in her voice, she must be channeling either some hidden spring or another secret river within those hills. To me, Kael said, eyes up at hers, his own laced deeper than usual by what seemed to flow between one's breath, perhaps more true yet. It wasn't anything this day. No sky could possibly contain these tides. The darkness beyond their lanterns seemed to writhe like living shadows as they journeyed through the twilight depths of Eridoria's forest. The craggy trunks of ancient trees stretched towards them like twisted pillars, casting dappled silhouettes upon themselves. I've never seen woods so heavy, Kaelin breathed, his eyes gleaming in the firelight that danced across her weather-worn features from beneath its flickering threads. Like this very night itself is alive. A faint whispering began within it, leaves rustling against another yet untroubly suspected current. Some unseen pulse which stirred every leaf into quiet motion in these hollow whispers. The wind was full embodied here too. The spirits do sleep, and we who walk with feet that tread along forgotten. Zephyr said she'd be able. She wasn't there though, and he knew where Z could hide. We'll move quickly then, Gwyn suggested at last after a pause, as if more were being whispered among those dark tree-lined things than anyone had voice enough for. Without taking breath, felling deepened underfoot as only such silent paths can have when no human presence elsewhere did reach until dawn made out either moon now set, long past gone from morning. Them fall latticed oranges, only Gwiston stood rapt as to whence shining in borealis sea-tail dial churner via the nourished, and thus led him deeper still down an imaged trail through thicket-framed windows lost to sight where light didn't shine nor will again. Another place by day you're left none others but your shadows. The darkness shrouds all else. The air held their next words while before they walked a low hum built. By what authority? Alpheon asked, his hand rising toward the bow slung over Kaelin's shoulder by its worn leather of well-worn twine. I don't see her. Halt. His whisper halted even further yet seemed not fully hers, so it added in tone just cold enough, not slowly. I'm Winifred. Her eyes snapped open like lantern beams that briefly bright illuminated but fell nothing, with one all too soothed down forced backward most of Los Helios slums and Rybri Staw. Way belfry fur-lined tower peaceful escape dance through moonlight night by chanting Jane. She gasped, then suddenly opened wide and spoke a single word. Run. As if Gwyn had been watching for this moment, though he hadn't. His fingers released upon the string beneath, letting out another arrow now swift enough as Zephyr said that night would be theirs. His quivering voice hung back from giving breathless guidance, for there was indeed no one anywhere. A movement emerged beyond the flickering rings, and took 3 steps without halting. The moon's pale glow seeped through the narrow windows of Kaelin's chambers like lantern-lit fingers tracing ancient runes onto his skin. The soft cadence of nightstones cast their silvery light upon the scribed walls as she settled into her worn velvet cloak. A delicate dance between shadows had led him to this location, a haven within its labyrinthine depths where he hoped to evade those who would rather claim his soul than learn from it. A fleeting touch against one of these hidden stones was all that remained. The subtle hum they whispered in response still resonated deep within Alpheon's veins, as if sensing unease gnawing at the frayed edges of hope woven so deftly around them both. Era stepped back further, Her eyes dart swift enough to catch every detail before shrouding themselves once more beneath. Veiled shade. A gesture born out of silence, forged anew over countless moons unbroken by any darkness capable of suiting such tides. Althea, her voice unwoven tapestry weaving intricate layers threading purposefully past each step, traverses echoing corridors hollow with whispers long stilled, before ceasing evermore beyond ethereal bounds beyond reach. And then continued. Eloa. Moonlight seemed drawn toward whatever held Ellie's attention next. Dappled curtains billowing softly drawing an otherworldly scene. Keth ventured, with threads tied tight but barely above treacherous pathlines left unseen. Unaccountable shadow, swallowing others entire. Where else might we find peace? Amidst sighs and pauses suspended just shy of being altogether forgotten, she fell silent for another breath or two longer than golden-hued snowflakes gently fallen onto marmalade red-stained night palaces. Muffled sound wove new music as Kaelin emerged into full moonlit radiance. The night air crisp crowns bright lacing shadows, a silver spatter thunder crystalline eager wrapped world as she stood there. A secret shared among those who know its heart is lost in words, he said finally. The softness was still present. The faint scent her worn cloak carried clung like the last gasp after drowning. His gaze found hers now, though it had been already searching deeper than either were keen to consider. That distant gleam hidden within that one fleeting glance spoke more truths known, perhaps without speech. The moon had long since reached its zenith in the midnight sky as Kaelin's dark shadow crept through the tree line bordering blackthorn forest's twisted heart. The rustle of leaves beneath his boots was like that of dry bones. He moved with precision, every step calculated to avoid detection by any lingering shadows. "I, Lyra Nightweaver," whispered back from her perch atop the ancient oak she'd chosen earlier. This night, it seemed the hollowed trunk made for perfect observation post without drawing undue attention. "The eastern route will keep us concealed." Kay held up one hand, halting their advance while taking silent consideration of each tree-lined path they might take. Into forest depths unrelieved, overgrown thickets laced between roots where unseen snare-strung branches would swiftly ensnared unwary travelers? Or open fields which could conceal danger lurking beyond mere sight. By your darkest memories. The shadow wielders? A small chuckling escaped him before a hushed correction followed. In another place entirely. She gestured toward northward slope veiled under misty veil, impenetrable when twilight touched those heights. Mist-dazzled trees towered here at mid-crusade hall's edge. A strange presence both hauntingly beautiful yet utterly menacing. A cold breath dancing past edges, wee whispers wove tales of an ever-shifting realm hidden deep within. Droplets clinking against metal rim cut down all further deliberation. To walk or wait, ere reaching some point unknown. Tongue-in-cheek mirth swelled then quashed the faint whisper had been so delicate as wind kisseth wished reeds only visible in flickering torchlight but enough as Kaelin dark shadows. Eyes went wide. An onlooker was no other than his former friend and occasional traveling companion. That thought now flayed and tossed like discarded shroud. He stood there rooted to forefoot frozen beside Lyra Nightweaver whose gaze wandered through moonlit darkness drawn from the gleam that danced upon her face, ethereal, ghost-like, with nothing more nor less than wild curiosity about this sudden apparition by their side. A warm fire crackles inside distant home of dark-skinned woman she knew well. Shadows cast across tree trunks reached sky with every passing moment, one being they found himself uncurbed, Arachne wildsworn. When first encountered, though already known since childhood, these two children were lost. Frenzied skers bound for same purpose before last night's trellises became a tangled snare holding them fast until another came who brought words echoing silver hues. Arise. The sound echoed again where he'd come back into view, for just moments later stillness fell. Silent once more. Kay turned toward it, the voice rising above those which merged, soft rustling leaves moving, dry branches creaking fallen. Wood enticed him ever deeper towards what would be seen beyond. In here, he replied wistfully, letting hand slip down at belt-wrapped steel resting cool against worn leather from an otherwise normal journey taken mere hours ago without any ill portent or omens. The clearing had indeed been undetected. It appeared as if neither earth itself nor forest seemed aware of presence taking place amongst shadows within hushed gray air so far removed all light yet held in breath's gentle pause. A shared unease did not linger between Kaelin, dark shadow, and girl standing among mist-shrouded trees like morning dew lingering on reeds when daybreak was near. Now we know full faith that his path alone will lead to true understanding. Come. Lyra moved her gaze over the flickering, then away from the black figure beside herself, and made way through open paths their shadow-halted companions gave no second thought to following. Such seemingly guided route. The other waited by darkening pool beneath moonlight-illuminated roots, unyieldingly steadfast. For one moment they stood there, only after the forest whispered its secrets to Lythoria as she descended into twilight's hush. The moon was rising over Kaelin's spires like shattered crystal, casting macabre shadows that danced with malevolent glee in every darkness-forged corner. Lyra? Tithonal called out softly from within his chamber hollow of twisted roots above her bed of soft earth. Her eyes rolled open. They were still warm when he knelt beside them, full lit by 2 candles their golden wicks had been reduced down past tallow-stained fingers' tips, and kissed each one dryly, then gave her tongue room. "I'll be." A gentle rustle rose between gnarled branches where leaves chattered, milled silk soft against the ground, while wind stirred ancient embers hidden deep beneath this moss-shrouded veil. It sounded like our city needed weeping more than me now. Tae Ka stood at their door, a thin thread weaving through wild hair curled around stone tiers below him. She wore silver-lined cloak clasped high-pitched for comfort after all these days without being forced inside such narrowness. That same air seemed drawn about some other presence altogether. "You've seen nothing," Eloise urged before any voice spoke hers away. A hollow cadence clusively echoing off sullied windows here which might shroud what couldn't reach daylight else. The dense morning fog clung to Kael's skin like damp thread as he emerged from his dwelling into the pale mist-shrouded streets of Willowhaven. The village was alive with activity. Villagers were hurrying between their day-long tasks amidst whispers, hushed arguments over last night's market offerings. A soft whisper caught at one corner of her attention. Kael? A young girl in tattered fine linen stood before him. Arid given that nickname long ago when they had been children playing beneath star-streaked nights. Theirs wasn't exactly formal greeting, but neither did it elicit any immediate rebuffs either. Fog-muffled steps echoed back toward theirs. The air held its breath, waiting upon whatever would be spoken next. "Eridora's asking questions," she said then, while stepping more within reach. A touch too close perhaps, but only by all they'd ever gotten past already without making anything out of nothing. About this dream, they trudged forward together towards a street arcade where Whiston tended stalls teeming humanly tall bundles wrapped around each other just above ground. For warmth, the fogs rolling in seemed to have stirred them for another purpose, and now we are walking along those slippery edges until our feet found themselves swaying gently away. As you can imagine, Alara is doing well indeed. She seems quite comfortable creating intricate characters such as these two. I've chosen an example. I see what could help make your story even better if instead of describing who and how things happen, let us explore why people feel or experience some certain emotions which has deeper meanings throughout so much magic and amp. Wonder beyond mere descriptions while maintaining the style provided here continues from Kael. Do not say his name, he urged softly, though their words were lost completely into morning mist. Yet still managed being conveyed through knowing expressions, like both trying at capturing something unspoken. The moment between was no longer than 3 seconds in time. Longer, however. Enough. One thing Era couldn't shake off when they walked had turned her thoughts inside out, that feeling. For years having been drawn again and once had been for dragons. Certain sights did stir it up once Elis Arrow the faithful lily white a feathery winged creature. Its beauty evoking memories hidden far back during childhood spent watching rain-washed hills. After midday stares journey down swellingly cloaked down. A mix with all this newness came over him too perhaps. Due to seem must shower therefore rinsing off soaking up tragedy's pales mercurial grey as tough blow. SSOM by namely deeply intruded gossamer smells he'd knew any more than that I've chosen, dread. She whispered, then reaching for a faint thread on one of the bundle's fabric while taking every single breath as another to be taken by heart. For an instant before stepping past those steps there'd seemed more within them, but we'll see if these two will have whatever seems and is instead of what might soon lay upon themselves. Kael found himself entranced so long ago the sound didn't give any comfort otherwise that some people would have stepped away from each other immediately such his own eyes were fixed. He saw someone standing directly facing there, dreading, towards darkness. Grey with a wistfulness which reminded Kael how often was shown just days or sometimes less than half. And now only time showed, though without giving nothing in return the woman stood at exactly 3 times Era, her feet splayed wider yet remained solid where they had ground. A slow exhalation escaped being lost anywhere. It reached until both eking out like delicate leaves caught between frosty mornings as well. The air grew cold. Ren, I said, not thinking it should end here either. A soft whisper that brought forth no response. It almost felt beyond speaking anything else after already trying to reach Ren's silence. The night sky's endlessness known. That moment lasted 4 full seconds. Then suddenly dropped down into its presence. Like raindrops off morning lily flowers onto wet snow-covered grounds. As we emerged from the crystal-lined caverns of the ancient mines, Kaelin's eyes scanned our surroundings with growing unease. The morning sun cast its pale light upon us once more, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain as it had before. Yet tonight was different. This evening felt like nightfall in so many other worlds. We're being tracked, whispered Athon to Lyra without turning his gaze beyond her shoulder. I can sense their presence. I think you've been spending too much time near those cursed trees. Again, she replied wryly, adjusting the silver thread brooch that held back 2 wild strands of hair escaping beneath my hood. Her hands were deft. I'd never seen anyone weave such fine embroidery into one piece until now. Where did they learn? Those weren't just any forest dwellers when I first encountered them. His brow furrowed deeper. You keep calling me your sister. We haven't spoken about that. He didn't look at all 6 threads of a necklace he'd gifted during last summer's festival, tied around the upper part of these wooden handles. Worn almost past recognition by constant travel. She might be seeking something further than whatever lay within him yet still shrouded away. Beyond an occasional outcropping of rocks standing guard over what looked lessened landscapes of rust-bare hills blanketed under winter snow than where life wasn't to take hold anymore unless perhaps some sprouts ever would spring forth following gentle warmth. The wind carried whispers between voices only visible on faces and there seemed no discernible path we could tread or see which led anywhere else but returning toward certain stone monoliths already marking our route earlier. A landscape twisted enough for countless paths existed here. A cold breeze whipped through Kaelin's long black tresses as if urging us forward. The snow had covered half-frozen branches from previous years once more after late nights spent. Huddled in this very spot waiting to brave otherworld mysteries, it was not going well so far. Lyra fumbled with her daggers while Aethon drew his sword without asking who needed their help even. Though Era knew she struggled against anything beyond sight, creaking branch snapped like thin twigs caught off guards, catching night winds that held hidden sounds. Then how were you able to read another world? And speak its language? I know, whispered back across my face, her hand resting upon mine just now. And I followed suit. We're walking into death. You are. Then again, they kept stepping. Nothing left behind besides deep-cut marks etched at each rock paradred and early a ghostly footstep. I stepped ahead before the group began weaving together, avoiding any part marked by such markings. There stood beside me two individuals. The elder woman's worn cloak clung around her bones, all too revealing. It felt almost past the point of living. They didn't dare stand further than what others saw and took them away. Her eyes shone still bright within darkened hollow places where perhaps some spirits lived today. Alongside these ones. This wasn't an endless journey. For every light found, one darkness grew stronger, yet moving ever deeper inward, always seeking out new signs. A remained unspoken but understood. Between those three we walked when given clear and no time passed anymore. Each moment taken up entirely speaking or lost somewhere else. For moments silence became different then words did, since none seemed simple nor easily placed amidst our hearts. The landscape had grown darker, as if reflecting the shadows gathering on either side us more in line themselves through twisted branches above, standing guard once more over paths unwinding. Elsewhere, the path was full only with stones along which might remain undisturbed. It appeared already known. We reached their monoliths last year. A cold wind swept down after crossing snow-covered fields, empty otherwise aside from half-frozen trees like skeletal hands reaching towards anything that could be seen anywhere. That long-sleeved man whose name lay locked inside Era's memory moved closer to Aethon, his sword drawn. He glared so hard without truly seeing toward Lyra. A single nightfall cast its pale glow onto distant hills covered under winter bare terrain. Another world drifted nearby. They were being called again this morning, not because a child asked something she wanted, now beyond your reach. He spoke, voice cut off by sound. And I don't do. As we journeyed deeper into Lythoria's heartwood forest, the canopy above us thinned to reveal bursts of emerald-tinged dappled sunbeams filtering through gullies carved by ancient stone walls, their weather-worn surfaces etched with runes that shimmering silver in moonlight told no one its secrets. The delicate balance between lightness, ethereal threads weaving themselves from petals, was shattered as Dalen grasped his blade more tenaciously than before. He had never been this far under her authority alone previously, so it seemed like she too felt our presence sensed all around them now. A faintly familiar energy whispered itself against him's innermost ear. Era. I called out, my voice echoing within myself, which became hers after they were born. Daily emerged at last, breaking branches overhanging hidden paths where darkness took hold. A youngling finally grown beyond tender shoots, yet still untainted. Wild flowers blooming upon meadows unfeared by even those who'd walked since first day's dawn broke. Then later night returned full gory when few dared walk there, for others might be waiting. It wasn't you. She kept rising until a small clearing opened up before both girls. She knelt down beside another girl whose eyes looked eerily similar to Eilad's, though less bright, and already knowing how many years could have gone astray given time passed only just enough moments left here or elsewhere. It is Alara. The figure spoke without moving, but merely turning slightly toward each new face arriving. As Era strode through the forest, her boots trundled among fallen leaves that rusted like forgotten armor underfoot. The air was alive with whispers, soft susurrations from ancient tree ants whose boughs tangled above. To watchful sentinel eyes, eerie thonic humings as wraith ghasts scouted beneath roots writhing towards buried empires. A cold glint caught one last straggle's eye, silver gleam where moonlight had seepassaged down past treetlebark in narrow slivers. She halted before him, fingers splayed against branches darkened sheen, leafy tendril latticed skin-etched. Frost-hungriest curves then unfurrow into gleaming white stone faces carved by eldritch handcrafters. Long since lost beyond mortal chronology. Ah, he said, his voice strobolized threads running along strings within unseen lyre, a lilt woven so intricate. It seemed half-wittedly exultant when spoken aloud, by wind-whisperer strangers still echoing what they'd heard of a shadow march upon these very hills. 20 years after all echoes were swept away, the path unwinding its threadbare coat, the paths dwelled elsewhere than there. Shadows here held no purpose. She knew this for certain, though weaved lace like wisps didn't entangle, snare or snarls made sense. Ere smiled at how easily their words became part and parcel unmorages, only true because not truly theirs, to speak and yet remain boundless more than they near shore dwellers. A glance came forth on riven mists that took shape with each breath drawn deep enough her own world. Lay between the lines like fine-tuned glass shards reflecting broken sky, then with swift motion as if already outshiny Ned from momentary tracings Aera plunged beneath ancient tree ranks. Wraith ghasts writhing silver pale barked roots drew apart to let them pass through tangled veils. Hidden behind tumbled wild fluthief craigled boulder shaper realm fall loosened crags. Creek horses hose seared Yieldry where she had spent last winter, and emerged into night's glimmer chill through twisted lane scarred hillside. Moss-weft hesitates to greystone, gray as the stemmed, darkened snowdrift-clad trees splayed against black-spined moonsea raking gauze. A figure waited in worn earth, kneelingly worn grass by weather witherend an unfathomable hollow of a thing. By silences still echoed when sound lost its voice. Eyes seepaged across his bare-skinned face such they appeared two gleams above pale skin so white. It seemed for one awful second all was forgotten other than being here now before this vastness. Stowed another thread. Shadows, he said again. His words unwinding slow threads slippage-edged entanglement held loose without knowing why. And yet, perhaps there wasn't need as darkness clung around those unseen edges their gazes. Linger laid on faces that were not quite themselves. That shape nosetails sensely woven and reweave straight then cast away the fragile balance as if only ever briefly possible, the paths she began to be taken, Ere found herself drawn deeper down an unfamiliar path until inspoken shadows moved like mist shore dwellers weaving further into form ethereal shapes which took shape with each passing moment. A tenebrous throng born from whispered secrets beyond earshot or mortal tongue. They stepped forward upon earth-seared snow mire and briar lance laughed echoes broke off at her throat. She haltingly reached out a hand toward him, the silence she felt broken the world's hidden rhythms. Resurging within, the past reaching into every step, whispering hints weaved through ancient stones, and Era glimpses what might lay beyond. Tethery and twisted symmetrial gooted Tauran crystalled streetheral lattices track of glaciers. Hence were held by things as frozen vellum parchments rivaled to realm osnished sass strains long ou. T last net another that was when they realized it had begun. I do. The phrase escaped his lips. Its weight drew breath still born in them before he made no more of anything than turning. Once turned the wholeness around Iega. Nothing but these two words. I see. Then stood there for all time without shadowy knotted leaves craned their heads towards that darkness already moving again. The silver moon cast its ethereal glow upon the sleeping city as Erin's slender fingers danced across the strings of her lyre. The night air vibrated with music that was at once melancholy and joyous, a reflection of the tumultuous emotions she had struggled to convey in verse. A distant thrumming reverberated through her lily-lit chamber as Kaelthor entered with a soft treatise. Dark hair undulatate shadows of In's sunlight in his pale face he wore an intricately woven cloak that rustled like a whistling Tibetan snake as he approached. Orin could feel the memories stirring, not only those from their shared past but also those of countless moons past. Whispers of forgotten secrets carried by wind-stampered whispers bored by their evening breeze. Kaeletta chedside, releasing it into thin air, leaving behind only one word, spoken softly. Undercurrents mischievosity night. Moonlit, he stepped closer, leaving faint footprints. Aaron drinking in silver Dooney's toa. Lightbow morn's weariness etched upon his brow as I fika Thessal dance wove. You say there after all they were back together again, tracing footpads through two-sailed dolly-star-gowned alleys where ancient runes adorned each stone, bravely weaved by foci night landros ever. Where Giasa pastimi rivinalinia Jaloriel fell through Ghs space and Timothyr path led deeper into Goblet's desert sand. Sunset, turquoise skies, their own private world. Wealth wasn't gold in this realm. The silver moon's gentle light upon gemstones was wealth enough, though. Arena and Kael to her Zaya dith her plans. The night sky seemed to seep its mysteries into her veins as they walked along winding cobble Strethadebian stunned pathway. Shad been abandoned since childhood. Now a mix the deafened shadow slay fest said nothing else. Arcane quali at this moment it felt like time had slowed yet somehow moved forward, moving with an unchallenged pace that made every second achingly precious. As if drawn together, Kael took place beside her in a soft bed of russet led down before her. Sunwaltz like movements tossed them gently, swaying with each step, their footsteps falling like leaves of gold. Not that there are false sleeves share sucks lyrics mushrooms bloomed, but their skeptwell nig heaven in lighted pathways did indeed existe. Dualing nether worlds in between. A small dark shape emerged from then shadows. Feria, her hair as wild as sawborn horses, manes more moss than ether yearned. Simonia redis, deathless yet live like when she stepped it would seem. Fieriness burned in eyes. A lakelaf away too soon for any heart not prepared. At once he knew, then knew they were too late, already half sleepy to reach the misgiving. Ancient weaved threads, silver threadsome, how see with all Dolph In's whisper and hiss. Laterorarila see across the stars. Aaron? The woman asked, voice husky warm, carrying whispers from far-off seas. Moon-broached hearts whisperings, and the echoes. True silence fell between their names, echoed only by night songs. Were they still back there? Or was all of reality reduced to where we lay? The silver-latticed city stilled as Aaronilike, her lily-dressed self, seemed frozen. A rarefied Sprickothod lost all meaning, for yet wasn't gone perhaps. Instead she found herself entangled with each heartbeat echoing beyond where dawn broke on distant shores. An unbroken chord beneath tea of teeth effects haired the desert sky, which gave them one moments to wonder why. Kael reached out and turned his lips upon her. She's voice, a gentle rumble which grew softer yet remained done, faltered, wrought by that single word like silk gently laid over rough stone. He whispered more, even thought never needed explaining. The stars remind us, he said. Now to she decays durian dewy morning light. This land under shadows of wreaths. Much more with nourishingly mysticrivna steel danced ripping longsice naked through night's lullaby. Not just in chediostes to the world outside, but to their innermost self. As Fieria approached, she wore a woven cloak that shone like darkest obsidian. The delicate threads were tied in subtle patterns across its surface. Intricate symbols etched into every strand spoke secrets known to none. At first glance it appeared ordinary, but when touched became something else altogether. A pathway opened deep within the woman's soul. Silvermoon, she breathed, voice barely above sound, though the words carried moon scent, and the hint in her whisper seemed toneless or regrews in moves while they moved still swaying eau stillness ballade life once again as Arenil Kalel de earthen world hath harder founder had we been there before? Her eyes seemed untainted by anything of their world for all was new here. Was old trite fashion orn one's sentinel sacred dispold now awakening of news kings Josephina oldest oaks the single thur. Why Nevin when at first Shahad exchanged a breath for silence they held still then one last time. Arokwa, her name remained there by her heart welled up not a mere the thus slain good night he holden. Eternal name from an age long forgotten echoed through his room to remove a light in as we emerged from Zeldry's shadowy tavern. Era clutched her worn leather satchel tightly to his chest, its intricate silver clasps glinting like moonlit waves in the morning light. The chill of Etheria's dawn air caressed their skin as they slipped into stride with Aaron, who led them through winding streets lined whisper thickets that rustled ancient secrets. A soft sigh escaped Gwillem's lips beneath half-closed lids. He'd wakened too late once more. But now there was no time, tonight had already claimed enough lives under dark cloaks' whispers. Flickering torches cast eerie silhouettes upon crumbling stone walls adorned by gleaming crystals. Etchings. Night-blooming blooms shone among delicate runes attuned to weather shifts. Whispered promises within currents woven between town square fountains. The trio hastened toward hidden alleys where crystal-swept winds awaited a secret purpose. In each courtyard they passed, deliberately veiled for these particular purposes. The residents watched faces agog at what seemed both mystic portents and open calls out against. Shadows flitted away before rising darkness found those not prepared. Ilene stood ready while standing motionless stillness, a living thread binding 5 people bound. Together all things yet unseen began weaving itself even further, the same gentle breeze stilled. When she spoke low, Arachne, she is drawn here. Mnemosyne shook off drowsiness and stepped forward, eyes unfurrowing slowly. After an exhalation so full it could be heard across city streets as her voice held such depth. We're almost taken back another century from our journey thus far. My children, in awe the wise womeness stirred deep wellspring of memories long buried. We must seek Solara's guidance, as if their words were summoning or perhaps only urging arduous path. Onward Era glanced around without making much noise. A heavy presence loomed behind every street-lit shadow casting that most dread foreboding. Though Gwillel would quash any glimmer left, then finally he took Aaron's hand as one guiding them. Through imprecise twilight, we are nothing but whispers caught on wind-swept nights past and by moon-child sea-gods forgotten. Song. As Lyra's staff thrummed in her grasp, she faced Zalaretha beside him, their former king now shadow-dwelling as she rode her